With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome to the PowerCat Podcast, GoPowerCat.com's Kansas State Athletics Show. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, from the GPC studios, here's your host, GoPowerCat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the PowerCat Questions Podcast, and today's lesson is, sometimes things don't go right. This is our second attempt at this first half of the podcast because we did this earlier in the day, but the first half seemed to record. It did everything it was supposed to do in the recording process, but there was nothing there.
Good thing we have no lives.
The second half was fine on the same SD card. So I feel like Jerry Seinfeld right now, trying to pick up his rental car. My SD card took my reservation. It just didn't have a car for me. There was no sound there. Tim Fitzgerald, Zach Carlson, that was Cole Carmody, and that's Ryan Gills Gilbert. It is, I can't even see my damn clock.
It's 10:42.
It's 10:42 at night.
I've spent more time over here today than I have my own house.
Well, let's get to all the stuff going on around GoPowerCat.com. So Cole was over here earlier after we recorded the podcast. This is your third trip to the house, isn't it?
It is.
No, the studio, sorry. We recorded the first edition of the Friday walkthrough. We gave ourselves plenty of time to set it all up, and Zach and I can work on what it's going to look like, and we'll have to make some changes for the second one, but I thought it went pretty well. Even though the second half of that one, the sound didn't record properly in a different way. Technology's just killing me today. And if you've seen my walk and talk, we have no idea what happened there.
And Ryan and I also showed up 30 minutes to the press conference today because we thought lunch was going to be there, when in reality, there was no food.
Yeah, you know there's a reason why I showed up to the press conference today. I didn't care what Kleiman had to say, but I heard there was lunch.
Like a bear.
You heard wrong.
It was fake news.
showing up for the free food. Oh, my God. Okay, folks, I got a big announcement to make, which is kind of cool because the first time we did this, I bleeping forgot to say this. I'm yelling, aren't I? And so I put it in the second half. Now I'm going to have to edit the second half to remove this information that I shared anyhow. I am very happy, it doesn't sound like it, to announce that we have come to an NIL agreement with 3 Kansas State football players. Now, before you think it's going to be something big and fancy, Felix, Cooper, and the defensive deuce. Well, that sounds weird. Cooper Beebe, Felix Anudike Uzama, and Daniel Green are going to record some reads for us, getting us into the podcast, into the break, and out of the break. And they will appear all football season long on this podcast, our pregame podcast, and our postgame podcast. So we have signed them to NIL agreements. And in fact, they will be over here in 14 hours to do it. Hopefully it works.
And I'll be back.
And you'll be back. Oh, my gosh, what a day. My walk and talk, I look like I've been exposed to radiation. We have no idea why.
Technically, that's the truth.
Yeah.
It is the truth.
Do you think it just came out today? That all the radiation, just the light was perfect and you could see I was translucent?
The human eyes can't see it.
Honestly,
Only cameras can see
it looks even worse in YouTube than it did in
Oh my God,
Premiere.
so bad.
And it looked okay. It looked yes, it looked different in Premiere, but it was like if this is it looks fine enough in Premiere, but he looks
Like an angel.
he looks like he has the suds.
You keep saying that. I'm not quite sure what the suds means.
If you're a millennial or a Gen Z,
What were those bottle caps
You know.
or wine cork caps that they stuck all in SpongeBob's holes?
yeah, it's corks.
What?
I think it's time for the questions.
That's got one more important thing to say. We're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you stop into the Fridge every time you come to Manhattan. And I suspect a lot of you will be coming to Manhattan in, say, 10 days. So here's the thing. It's the family reunion. You got to pack up the family truckster and you got to come to Manhattan with all your tailgate's goods. But you don't bring the booze from home. You stop at the Fridge. You go see our friends Kevin and all the great people at the Fridge, and they will get you hooked up with the perfect drinks for your tailgate. Go ask them if they got anything from South Dakota so you can drink it and dispose of it in that way that you do after you drink liquids. Stop at the Fridge whenever you come to town. It's your questions from Wabash Station. Ryan Gilbert is taking the first half, I think. That's the way I think it was earlier today.
I'm getting deja vu over here.
I don't know who I am or what I'm doing, but let's get going with the pod. Hopefully it's recording. I keep looking down. It seems to be recording. Zach's in the zone. Zach went to bed. He's mentally in bed.
I've had a few beers tonight.
Wow.
He's broken one of the rules of the podcast, but we did call him in from Golf League, so it's okay.
From Purple Hokey, can we have an update on the parking that was relocated from the east side of the bill? Where is that parking located now?
Jeez.
It's okay, Zach. You answered this question earlier
Yeah,
today.
I answered it earlier, and Fitz just looks at me and it's silence. A lot of that parking on the east side, that old grass or gravel lot that you enter with Gate 9, kind of where the intramural fields are, that old grass lot is now completely paved. It is paved. It is a large parking lot now. Is it replacing all of the spots that were lost from the east side? No. It's probably going to be a net loss. But there is a significant amount of concrete where there was not concrete before. But even with the practice field kind of even juts out further into that lane from Gate 8, so you kind of have to jog around it to get
You
back.
said Gate 9 earlier, didn't you?
Yes, Gate 9 is the intramural fields. Gate 8
where the
is
Germans
the
enter.
one
Okay.
where you enter to the actual east side.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So Gate 8.
So what was Gate 7, the one that no longer is useful?
Gate 7.
By the veneer complex?
By veneer, and you can kind of use it, but Gate 8 is going to be the one that we will use to get, or anyone going to a basketball game that parks on the east side, you're going to take gate 8 and go around.
So how will this affect the students and the fraternity, specifically the fraternities? Because I mean, Ryan, you know this. I mean, when you were doing that stuff and tailgating before the games, like that's
I don't drink.
Sure, you weren't drinking. You were.
Well, you're having some milk, but you were still tailgating.
It was apple juice, Fitz.
Okay.
There's a large section of Greek life that partake in these tailgates, and so after doing some exhaustive research, which by that I mean looking at my email, they're selling these spots for $20.
You got to be worn out.
They're selling these spots for $20. Does that mean that the Greek life and fraternities get priority? Or, I mean, theoretically, you could just have normal students buy up these spots and you know, this tradition of these massive tailgates just go by the wayside. I'm very curious to see what ends up happening in that. But, I mean, it seems like a big deal to me. I don't know. It just does.
Well, it is going to be a change for everyone. I mean, I got to admit this. When they decided they needed to put the practice facility right there, I didn't realize it'd be that big. It's enormous.
It's huge.
Like you said, it basically goes out the entire length of the parking lot to the outside lane of the old lot. It's incredible. It's impressive. Man. And it has displaced a lot of people. And even with that said, I still think K-State has one of the best parking situations I've ever seen. And I've been to every Big 12 campus, and even the ones that aren't Big 12 anymore, and a lot of places around the country. Zach, I think you thought Iowa State
competes
but you
pretty
just
well.
like the bridge.
But Kimball needs a bridge, though.
It does need a bridge.
Build a bridge, and you can have competing bridges, and you can make a trophy for Farmageddon, and it's a bridge.
With some of these spots being lost and like the net spots being lost, do you think people charge more for parking around the stadium?
I would. It's a free market.
I would think that.
What was the net loss, Zach?
I
honestly couldn't tell you
know.
because
But I also don't think they
know,
were sold out in the past few
I don't
years.
know how that old grass lot was calculated. Were those calculated as official spots, or was it just, you know, did they not care?
Why do they not?
I mean, they probably counted it. They were charging money for it. They would probably had passes there. I mean, it's a little hard for us. We don't have to deal with parking over there. So, quite frankly, we're a little bit ignorant of how that process works over there. But people did park there, and there are more spots there now officially with lines and concrete. But a lot of those spots are going to go to the people that were displaced in the first place. So I don't know the exact procedures of what's happened.
Well, my question is this. Why do they not just let people park on the rec grass fields?
At some point,
Like that just there's so much land right there.
At some point, the rec grass fields probably need to be reduced in half.
There's no point of having 5 or 6 fields out
There's
there.
8 fields.
But those fields are very sensitive to like weather, and you know when it rains you can't be on them. So I think having
don't text mean things to them. They're sensitive.
True, but you know when it rains you're not allowed to be on them. So I think 1,000 cars isn't really going to.
Well, I don't think you're going to. If you took it away and let people park there, you're not treating it as grass anymore.
Fair.
You don't care about the status of the grass, and you'd probably pave over it due to that case there.
As much as I love intramurals, I think that parking for football is more important than half of because it is a big area.
It's huge.
So I agree. Trim it.
God, you guys are vicious. Now you're eliminating exercise from our lives. Just horrible. Zach's exactly right. We never go over on that side. It was annoying as hell during basketball season because you couldn't hardly even get to where we were designated to park, and then they moved where we were designated to park. I still don't know what happened there. But
it's not like the parking lots were ever full for basketball, let's be honest.
And what I didn't understand until recently was the volleyball facility on the west side and the Olympic training facility come out farther, and so that first entryway is useless now. They're going to have to move
Gate 1
it.
is gone.
Yeah, they're going to have to move
gone.
it. And I don't know how they're going to do that before the first game, or I don't know how it's going to be a mess. Us trying to get, if we're still parking around Brandonberry where they've had the media last couple of years, if we're going to have to go in and around, it's very interesting to me. First world problems.
From Mr. Zaiha, What if Adrian Martinez fails to meet expectations? How long of a leash does he have before the coaches switch to Will Howard?
Yeah, this is a really good question because we have no idea. I don't think they'll carry anything over from Nebraska, but you can't turn the ball over in timely situations. You can't. And I always come back to this. If he was so awful, why'd you keep playing him? Why was your quarterback recruiting in Lincoln so awful that you had to play a guy that was losing every game for you? That's what I've been told happened. I don't think he'll be that bad. One, I think he's going to be put in a position to be more successful. And two, I don't think he'll be running for his life after the snap of the ball. Almost every turnover I've seen, he's under pressure.
How far behind is Will Howard from Adrian Martinez at this point in time? That's the one thing that if we could sit down and have an off-the-record conversation with Colin Klein, I would love to know the answer to that question. Because
yeah, I mean, if you ask him in a press conference, it's pretty close. It's really, but is it?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is they're telling us Adrian Martinez looks great in practice. He solved his problems, if those actually existed. But they also tell us Will Howard looks good in practice. So again, you don't know what you're going to get until you get to the games. And if they're doing okay, I imagine they'll give Adrian plenty of rope. If it's getting to the point where it's going to cost you a game or two, Cole, I think they're going to have to yank him.
At what point do you say there's nothing that Adrian Martinez can do differently? I mean, that's kind of what happened in Nebraska. Fitz, you alluded to it, but it's like if they put a backup in, Nebraska was still going to lose, right? I mean, I don't know that if Adrian Martinez fails as quarterback at K-State that they'll put Will Howard in because, quite frankly, I don't know if they think Will Howard would be able to do a better job. Like, I think Adrian Martinez has to come in and be historically bad for Will Howard to play.
I think it would take up until at least the bye week before you consider pulling him. Like if you're 3-3 going into the bye week, maybe you consider making a change at that point, and depending on which games you lost. But I think it ultimately comes down to, did Adrian Martinez directly lose the games? Because I think that K-State is good enough from a personnel standpoint, offense and defense, that I don't think that it's going to be very impressive if Adrian Martinez is able to single-handedly lose a football game for K-State. I don't see it happening. So I think that, K-State's got to be like 3-3, and he's got to be playing really bad if they're going to go to Will Howard.
Agreed.
I don't see really any scenario in the first 6 games where Adrian Martinez is benched due to failure.
Gills, I'm going to put this in basketball terms. Tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
This is like a shooter who constantly shoots, and sometimes he makes them, right? And if he makes it, the whole world loves him. Other times when he misses it and shoots it from half court and misses it, guess what? Well, maybe it's time to trim that back. And you hope that those issues at the previous season are fixed, with this new coaching staff, under Colin Klein. But, I mean, to me, you can draw a lot of comparisons between Marquise Noel and Adrian Martinez. Simply for the fact of, did he do some things that can help you win? Yes. He did a lot of things that could help you win. Now, did he also put your team in some situations to where, well, maybe you're trying to win in spite of him? Sure, at Nebraska that happened. But now with Adrian Martinez, the hope is he cleaned up his turnover issues, and he's a facilitator, just like the point guard of the basketball team. Is that a stretch?
Hey, if Marquise Noel hears you say that, and you're a target for him and not me.
That's good.
I'm great with that.
That's good for you. I kind of get what you're saying, but I also don't. I mean,
both players turned the ball over. That's a factual statement. You can't argue that. So that aspect, yes, but...
Well, I guess both are entering seasons with new philosophy, new coaching.
Yeah.
Both need to clean that up.
And both have talent.
I would say Adrian Martinez has bigger upside talent. Mm-hmm. He has first-team All Big 12 talent. I don't know that Marquise can get there.
Well, the thing with Martinez is the team revolves around him. Right? K-State's not flirting with a New Year's Six Bowl like we'll talk about here in a second if Martinez isn't on his A game, right? Marquise Noel can play 20, 25 minutes, assist the basketball, facilitate the basketball, take open shots when he's open, right? He can do all those things, but he doesn't have to be the superstar. He thinks he does, but he doesn't have to be. So that's where I think you can draw the differences there with those two players.
That's really, you did say something there that would really interesting. Marquise believes he needs to be the leader for whatever reason. At Nebraska, Adrian Martinez was required to do it. They asked him to do superhuman things because the team wasn't good enough to take a lead, and they were always kind of behind just by a little bit, and you got to make a big play, and you got to do it. And I don't think that actual external demand is put on Marquise, but
internally,
he's horrible about it.
Last year, for him, you could understand that, though. I mean, that's where I kind of cut him some slack. But anyway, sorry not to go down.
If that was
rabbit
Bruce
hole.
Weber's 2013 team or 2018 team, he still would have done that stuff, though. It doesn't matter that his team was bad.
Fair enough.
I would agree with that.
To circle back to the
interesting
question,
rabbit hole.
I think that Martinez's leash is going to be just as long as any other Big 12 quarterback. What happened at Nebraska is in the past, and I don't think that really has any effect on Will Howard taking his spot anytime soon.
Any Big 12 quarterback? Texas?
Okay, fair.
Okay.
Fair. Good one.
All right.
From CW Power Cat, what's more likely, the football team plays in a New Year's Six Bowl or the men's basketball team finishing in the top half of the conference?
Okay. For the sake of this question, we're going to pretend we've never answered this question before.
I've been thinking about my response.
We don't want to ask Cole if he wants to be wrong again?
Exactly. Because I want to just say that I'm going to side with Ryan Gilbert in this.
Yes.
I think this team's capable of a New Year's Six football team, not the basketball team. That'd be weird. I don't know how they'd compete on a football field. That'd be just awkward. I think they're capable. In fact, I told a buddy I think that is where they should end up, or at least be of that quality. That's a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down, which I think we did in the first half, about would Kansas State be considered unless they played in. You okay over there?
Yes.
Gesundheit.
He tried his best to cover it.
I tried.
Would K-State be considered for a New Year's Six if it didn't make the championship game? I don't think so. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I think this team could be of that quality. Certainly will be of the quality of the highest bowls in the Big 12 pecking order below that. I'm confident of that. The projections I'm seeing from like ESPN they make me laugh. This is going to be a really good football team unless things just go horribly wrong with injuries. But the basketball team, to make the tournament, right? That means you're in the upper half of the conference. You make the tournament. Yeah, they can do that. Now it's wide open. It's hard to say, but I think that's more tangible than all the things that have to go right for a football program to stay healthy, make the right plays, don't get a bad call, all the stuff that goes into a season.
I think it depends upon your expectations for each team. If your expectation for basketball is that they make the NCAA tournament, you're going to side with the basketball team.
Well, the question is top half of the conference, technically speaking.
Technically speaking, sure. But either if you're in the top half, you're in the tournament, right? I mean,
oh, yeah.
So if you are expecting K-State to have a historical season, I feel like that's what they're capable of doing. I don't know if that's necessarily expectations, but they're capable of doing that. Then I think you have to side with the football team because they make the Big 12 championship. There's a good chance that they're in the New Year's Six. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm going to say football. It's just simply for the fact of there's a lot of unproven pieces in basketball, and there's a lot of proven pieces in football. And I'll take the ultra-high ceilings of Felix Enudike-Uzama, of Daniel Green, of Deuce Vaughn. Give me football to make the New Year's Six.
Okay.
It's basketball.
Yeah.
You just need to finish top 5 out of 10. That's 50%. You need to finish top 20% in football, probably. Unless it's Oklahoma and Texas, and K-State goes 7-2, and the losses are against OU and Texas, and OU runs the table, and Texas' only losses to OU. That's the only type of scenario. You can do it for any other team. Those are just the teams that came to my head.
But no, you're right. If you're at 10-2 and you're behind the two programs that the national media only thinks exist in this conference, then yeah, that is tangible. They could make it.
I think that they can be a top 12 team, and that's really all you need to be to make the New Year's Six. But they really do need to make the Big 12 championship game. And I can even see the flip side of that. If K-State loses the Big 12 championship game, they get relegated to the Alamo Bowl just because they're K-State. The Big 12 was down this year because OU and Texas.
Did you use relegation? Okay.
The Bob Alamo Bowl.
He's a good man.
He died for all of our sins.
But basketball, just being a top half of the conference team, I think is easier at this point, especially based on the personnel that K-State was able to add late going into the school year.
Basketball goes 7-2, defends its home court, and then picks up a few road wins. You're going to be at least 500, right? Which
Like
I
if
think
you're
they're more than
if you're
capable
10-8, you are probably tied for fifth.
Mm-hmm. Or you could
somehow
be third, like K-State. You mentioned Fitz in 2018.
It was fourth place.
Fourth, okay.
Yeah, 2018 they went 10-8.
Okay.
And the discussion though was seeding at that point, which we didn't get into this, and they were in the 8-9 game, which I still can't believe if you think about it. A team went 10-8 in the Big 12, placed fourth, and was an 8-9 seed.
Was there not outrage when that happened?
K-State's non-con was really bad.
Yeah.
Didn't they lose to Tulsa?
Yeah, they had some struggles that year. They kind of came on as the year went on.
So basically, if K-State, the question is, what's more likely, K-State to be an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament, or K-State football to make a New Year's 6?
K-State 8 seed.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
I'm so lazy. I'm not getting up to the mic.
Just say I agree. That's your line.
I agree.
Yes.
No,
It's a yes.
I agree with Ryan Gilbert.
For once. From Rick Bailey, EMA. Based on Colin Klein's interviews and performance in the bowl game, I'm anticipating K-State having a more attacking offense this year than we've seen in the last few years. And it sounds like as our defense gets more comfortable with the 3-4, we might see an even more aggressive defense this year. Agree?
I think the offense will attack more, but I don't think that the defense will necessarily be more aggressive. I think they're more comfortable. I think that they're more skillful, but I don't think that means they're going to be more aggressive. I think they'll be smart in their play calls and their positioning. I don't think it's necessarily going to be blitzing more than they have in the past.
Right.
I think that it's just going to be a more sound defense because they're more comfortable in the
But
formation.
here's the thing. You might leave with the perception that they were more aggressive simply because they were more successful with what they did. They might blitz the same, but they might be more successful with the blitzes. They might throw the ball downfield the same, but they might be more successful with it. I think what we'll see on offense is the management of the tempo will be much more notable. They are going to go faster, but not fast to just go fast. If they're playing well and they got a good rhythm, that's the thing. The bowl game, the players all said, we got in a rhythm. We're hitting plays. And I think they were just going too slow for what they were trying to do last year and the years before. And I think Colin will manage that. I think Colin will slow it down when they get a lead and not let, take the air out of the ball, so to speak. So I don't know about aggressive. I just think they're going to be more exact in their intentions of what they're trying to do.
So, Fitz, I'm assuming you were listening to Monty and I's conversation on this
Mostly.
week's version of the walkthrough. When we start talking about the defense, the thing that stuck out to me that, I thought about, but Monty brought it up, I thought it was intriguing, was the amount of athletes that are on the defense. And with the switch to now the 3-3-5, which they obviously, feel very comfortable in, K-State's amount of athletes that they're going to have on the field at one time, I mean, it's just remarkable. And now Joe Kleinerman's talked about it. These are all this staff's guys. Like, every person that's playing for the most part was brought in by this staff. They have handpicked these kids. And, yeah, I think it's going to look more aggressive. You're right, Fitz, but I think it's going to look more aggressive because they're more confident in the system. Coaches included. I think that's the coaches are going to know when to call the right calls because on defense, they know what to see. I mean, the coaches are learning. We're learning the whole entire year last year, too. And the fact that they were able to have that much success with it being the first year of that defense, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. It's like completely changing offensive schemes. Like, it'd be like if K-State decided that they're just going to run the I formation and run the wishbone now. Like, 3-3-5, 4-3, completely different. So that might be the thing I'm looking forward to the most is seeing how the defense plays in week one.
The defensive strategy is going to depend on if K-State's, up or down. If they're up, obviously keep everything in front of you, and if they're behind, yeah, you go ahead and roll the dice and try to make that play. But overall, it's going to be maybe with a little bit more swagger with what Colin Klein did in the bowl game, but it will depend.
Yeah, good point.
Was Kleiman talking about offense or defense today when he mentioned that?
He said they wanted to get 10 more plays in on offense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think same thing goes for defense, though.
Yep.
Maybe switch things up. Last question of the first half is from Chris66204. Given how well Skyler is performing in preseason for the Dolphins, usual caveat about playing against backups, to what extent was he held back from his potential at KSU by A, the Bill Snyder QB carousel, and B, Messingham's horrible feel for play calling?
Look, I can't explain why Bill Snyder was not bought in on Skylar Thompson. I didn't see the practices. I don't know. But it was clear to me during the course of that season, he wanted Alex Delton to be the guy that emerged, and Alex never took control of it. And Skylar kind of hung around. Skylar made enough plays, and I still can't grasp what was going on there. I think Chris Kleiman came in and recognized that Skylar was really good, and Skylar needed to be playing. I get that, and I appreciate that. But Skylar just never was healthy either. So,
But even off the field in the locker rooms and stuff, like Skylar Thompson was such a great leader, and I feel like he had to be like that at a young age, and I don't think you can say the same with Delton. So it just doesn't make sense.
I'm with you, Fitz. I mean, again, don't sleep on that Texas Tech injury. I mean, that was a big one that really put him out, and I think that that affected his career. Because if he doesn't get hurt against Texas Tech, who knows if he even comes back for that next year. If K-State has a successful season to finish 2020, he might be gone. So, I mean, yeah, there's so many things that went into Skylar's career that affected the outcome of it. But, I mean, it's really hard to believe that if he doesn't get hurt, that his career looks a whole hell of a lot different. Because, I mean,
do you think this looks better or worse?
It's tough. I think that if K-State continues to be as hot as they were in 2020, I think I talked about this last week. Who knows what happens with that 2020 season?
But who really will remember that season if K-State was even good? Who's going to remember it?
If K-State won the Big 12 championship, you bet your butt that
I guess
K-State fans would remember that season.
I mean, I think Skylar's success right now, I think his maturity and being a 25-year-old rookie is helping him as a football player, just from going in, doing the work, taking the reps, watching the film, learning the playbook. I think that, I don't know if that's going to change over 2 years more of college, but, being in college for 6 years, I can't help but wonder how much of that development is helping him now, going into his first year in the NFL.
We'll find out how much Colin Klein helped him because, I mean, he was his coach for, what was he? Was Colin Klein the coach for all 6 years that he was here? His quarterback coach?
That's a good question.
He was co-offensive coordinator for one season.
He was at Northern Iowa, and then he came out. I don't know.
Got to be close.
It's too late to ask me that question.
It was his development that Colin Klein really helped him. So, I mean, if he performs well, there's credit to Colin there.
I do wonder if the Messingham offense, I mean, we saw Will Howard struggle with it. Maybe Skylar was such a good quarterback that he made the most of it. And we thought he was just being an okay quarterback because he's not an okay quarterback in Miami right now. He's pretty damn good. Doesn't have the huge arm that you typically want in the NFL, but he's making good decisions. He's not turning the ball over. He's putting it in a position where receivers can catch it. It's impressive. And that just doesn't happen by accident. So maybe he just put everything together, but I also believe maybe he's just in a system now that works well with who he is as a quarterback.
Courtney Messingham called plays like he liked vanilla ice cream with no sugar.
You had me until the no sugar.
It means it was very basic.
People hate on good vanilla ice cream, man.
I know, I like it.
With no sugar.
No, that's bad.
Yeah.
Sugar,
I want extra sugar.
Topping?
Like sugarless ice cream.
Like sugar-free ice cream?
Sugar-free, yeah.
Huh.
The world's better with sugar. Like not the fake stuff, not this high corn fructose stuff, whatever it is, real sugar. And this first half has been the real sugar. Make sure you stop into the fridge when you come to town. When we come back, we'll go back in time to this afternoon when we recorded that half of this PowerCat Questions podcast.
GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat podcast continues after this short break.
Getting the crew together isn't as easy as it used to be. We get it. Life comes at you fast. But trust us, your pals are desperate for a good hang. And when they hear you stock the party with drinks from Drizzly, they'll be banging down your door. Let Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery, take care of the supplies. All you need is an excuse. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It's your dog's birthday. The loquats are finally ripe. Whatever. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on a massive selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered straight to your door, which means you can entice the crew to leave their houses without ever leaving yours. Whatever the occasion, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations. Picture this nightmare scenario. You're hosting friends for the big game. It's neck and neck in the fourth quarter, and suddenly you realize you're out of drinks. You start to sweat. Your friends start to turn on you. You're forced to go on a last-second drink run and end up missing the game-winning touchdown while in line. Terrifying, isn't it? Luckily, you can avoid the drama with Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. With Drizzly, you can shop a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits, then get them delivered right to your watch party. Compare prices across multiple stores in your area, find the best deals on game day drinks, and get back to armchair quarterbacking from, you guessed it, your armchair. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations.
Welcome back to the Power Cat Podcast. Now, let's return to the GPC studios.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Power Cat Questions podcast, sponsored by The Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you stop in and see Kevin and the gang at The Fridge next Saturday when you come to town. Just put off that shopping, wait till you're here, buy from the good guys, get the good stuff, and they'll be able to answer any appropriate questions. That's it for that. Here's your questions from Wabash Station. Cole Carmody's taking over.
Ricky Ticky Tavi has the first question of the second half. He says, I listened to the Jim Woolridge Life of Fitz podcast episode. Woolridge. I listened to the Jim Woolridge Life of Fitz podcast episode.
There's a Woolridge in there.
There's a D.
Woolridge. That's what I said.
Oh, okay.
Woolridge?
You didn't.
Oh, I never saw that. I guess
He never sees a D.
I never saw the D at all.
For that.
Okay.
I listened to the Jim Woolridge Life of Fitz podcast episode, and it made me ponder this question. How long before you could do something similar with Bruce Weber, and what would he say about his time here?
I don't foresee it ever happening, and here's why. If you listen to that podcast, you heard how I described and talked to Jim about his farewell press conference right after he had been fired. He had been told that he needed to make the NCAA tournament to be retained, and he didn't make it. So he knew going into the Big 12 tournament what his criteria for retention was, and he didn't meet it. And he invited selected media over to his hotel suite and mixed himself a nice scotch and said, don't mention this on anything, and sat there and we asked him questions as he sipped on his delicious drink and was a pro and a gentleman.
That doesn't sound like Bruce.
That's not how Bruce went out. And what's funny about it is Bruce had the same thing. He knew if he didn't make the tournament, he was going to be gone. We now know that to be true. We suspected it all along, but we now know it to be true. And he still went out burning bridges with a little napalming of the entire fan base. So no, I'm moving on. But you can recruit to Kansas State. I just want to point that out.
I am thinking that Bruce would say, if you asked him off the record, not just you, but anybody in general, if you went up to him and you asked him about his time in Manhattan, there's no way that he couldn't say, I gave it everything I had and it didn't work out. Like if he truly thinks in his mind that he should still be the head basketball coach,
it was the fans.
There's something wrong there. Like everybody.
But that's not how he went out. He made it very clear it wasn't his fault. It was the fans' fault.
It's a shame.
It was the injuries. It was the Wildcat curse.
I don't know. See if Ron Prince can come on and mediate it.
That's good. I might be more likely to have Ron Prince on, just because that would be a show. Did I say the T there? I think I missed
You missed the T, but the chances of that happening are near zero.
Yeah.
So that should tell you what the Bruce Weber one would be.
Bruce Weber's more likely than Tom Asbury.
Whoa.
Who would have ever thought you would have Mark Mangino on, though?
That's a valid point. That's very valid. Okay. 98. Give me 20 years. 20 plus years. Give me that.
Tell Bruce to keep his hair long and maybe.
That's not up to him. It's up to the NCAA, what they do with Kansas.
What a load of crap that was.
See, if he just would have went out that night after the loss to West Virginia,
Be great.
would have been awesome.
Would it have changed your viewpoint of things?
Absolutely. But he has this need to make excuses and burn bridges because he made excuses his entire time here. Nothing was ever, it was the, weather, it was the travel, it was so whatever.
Well, the team bus broke down on the way to the game.
I mean, if Gene would have just fired him the way that he should have been fired, we would have a different view of Bruce Weber right now.
Right. And I think if you ask the folks at K-State, well, I have, they regret letting him on their platform come back for that second time around. Mm-hmm. They thought they were doing a kindness to a guy who'd been coach for 10 years and people generally liked.
Why didn't they do it in person? That's what I want to know.
But
that thought crossed my mind, too.
Here's my thing is that folks may not realize this, but he didn't just burn bridges with that press conference. He napalmed relationships going out the door. I mean, it's unbelievable what he did. So, yeah. I mean, he's moved, and he's made it clear he doesn't want anyone to know where he's living because I don't know why he thinks K-Staters would even give a crap that if he lives in Sarasota or wherever it is in Florida he moved to. We don't care. Jerome Tang lives in Manhattan. That's what K-State people care about.
You think he's growing any bamboo trees in Florida?
I didn't have the patience for that.
I have a source that told me Bruce moved to the ATO house, and he's still here in Manhattan.
That's a good source. Boy, I hope he...
I thought there was a sorority that bought the house.
Mm-hmm.
Was it really?
It's because the tornado was back a couple months ago.
Was it Theta?
Theta or
I think it was Theta.
One of the two.
Just bought the house?
Yeah, I think they bought the house.
And so instead of fixing theirs up, they're just going to move in?
Be my guess.
For the year.
For the year they rented it or they bought it?
Oh, okay. It's temporary.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Chi Omega's in Jardine. They got relocated
Interesting.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was Theta, yeah.
We went from talking about Bruce Weber to talking about sororities.
It's that time of year.
Correlation.
Okay. Next question.
Long flowing hair.
Comes from Herdez Joe. Now that the roster is full, what can we really expect from men's basketball?
First, I didn't expect a full roster. I mean, I did when the whole process started, but then everyone left except two dudes. Then okay, and then Jerome himself said 11, and then before he went on vacation, he said 12. And I thought they'd settle in at 12. They wanted to save 13, and then this guy comes out of nowhere at the end. What was the question?
What can we fully expect?
I don't know, people. I don't know. There are more athletes on this team than I think this is a shot that Bruce Weber recruited in his 10 years in Manhattan. There are more long, athletic freaks on this team. There's a bunch of guys that remind me of Jamar Samuels. Does that mean they're great players? No, but they can do incredible things. They can play above the rim. They're not going to get out jumped for rebounds. So I don't know where this leads. I think they've got a couple guys that didn't produce a lot at their previous schools that will produce a lot here. But I think we can all agree, Gills, that Keontae Johnson changes the mathematics quite a bit because this is a guy that was legitimate at Florida. Mm-hmm. Legitimate before his health concerns.
Assuming he's healthy and assuming he's back to that, type of style he had at Florida. But that's a question mark. I think it's fair to bring that up.
I wish we knew how many games is his. His family won't discuss it.
I thought it was 10 or 9.
Yeah,
No?
I couldn't find it anywhere specifically what it said. Maybe you've seen some other articles, but yeah, let's say it's 10 games. He's basically got the non-conference to decide if he's healthy enough, and then he can shut it down and go off to the NBA. Oh my gosh, he could just play a little bit of basketball and say
he could pull an Antoine Davis on K-State and just clown everybody and leave. I'm not saying he will, but he could.
Yeah, play the minimum number of games, not spoil his $5 million until he's sure he Well, we'll see. I think he changes the equation quite a bit. And if he plays a full season for Kansas State, they finally have the guy.
And this is going to be probably one of the most outlandish things I've ever said on this podcast. I've said a lot of outlandish things.
Boy, here we go.
I was talking to somebody, and I firmly believe that the 100% healthy Keontae Johnson is the second most talented or third most talented player since Michael Beasley that K-State has had.
Okay. Dean Wade, Barry Brown.
I think that he has a higher ceiling than both Barry Brown and Dean Wade.
I would agree on the ceiling, yeah.
And I think he's more talented. I think he'll be more of an impact in the NBA. I think you look at Michael Beasley, you look at Jacob Poland, and then Keontae Johnson if he's healthy, and he's that good. Like, he is that good.
Yeah, I agree he can be that good, but as far as his impact on what he does for K-State, he won't even come close to Barry or Jake, but he can be better than those guys for sure.
Yeah, talent-wise. I mean, he's legit, and it doesn't take long. You don't have to watch much film. You don't have to go back and look at old games to see that he was Florida's entire team. Like, every single play they ran on offense, they ran through him. He's not just a slasher. He can shoot the basketball. He can rebound the basketball. He can finish at the rim. And he can block shots. And he's 6'5". That is exactly what K-State needed. They needed a 3. They got one. So if he's healthy, I think that he alone makes this team ceiling that much higher.
And folks, don't get too caught up into who's the 5, who's the big man, who's the post. They're going to go small. They're going to create it. They'll have a mismatch maybe in the post on one end of the floor, but they're going to have a complete mismatch on the other end with 5 athletes that the other team has to cover. I'm amazed that Jerome Tang was able to go out and find the type of athlete that they've been having at Baylor immediately for his first K-State team. It's impressive what they did. It really is.
So the shortest player on the team is Marquise Newell, obviously. He's listed at 5'8". Okay. The second shortest player on the team, Desi Sills at 6'2". Besides him, everybody else is 6'4" and taller. I mean, that's incredible.
It's incredible.
There are 2 guys who are under 6'4" on the team. And Mark Smith was 6'4" last year and the leading rebounder.
Yep. That's a good
on a Bruce Weber team.
Yeah, still. But, I mean, it doesn't take much, right? Ryan and I were talking about this in the car, actually, today. It's like, sure, maybe you're a little worried about the 5 position. But if you have 5 guards out there, it's not like the 5 guards that K-State had last year. You have 5 guards out there who can rebound the basketball, right? Take, for example, Dorian Finister, the true freshman who maybe we think might redshirt. We don't really know. He's 6'5".
Yep.
And we think of him as a point guard. Mm-hmm. So
it's impressive.
It's remarkable. It really is.
The one thing I would add about K-State playing small is just specifically Ish Massoud. He kind of left Wake Forest because he got stuck playing at the 5 spot, guarding players that were just so much more bigger and stronger than him. And I'm sure that was talked about, when Noel and Massoud stayed. Coaching staff probably had a talk with him about what he wants on this roster. So that's something that I'm watching out for. I mean, I know that Bebe and Colbert aren't going to be the best big men, but I don't know. You might have to roll with one of those guys on the court for a good chunk of your time.
And we talked about, I think this team's going to play zone. With that length.
Wouldn't surprise me.
This team and that Baylor zone, it would not surprise me to see them play zone.
They will certainly play some of it. Mm-hmm. No doubt about it. I'm just intrigued to see how he puts it all together. But I know this. They're going to be fun. They're going to get up and down. And they're not going to be rewarded for playing hard. They're going to be punished if they don't play hard enough. Because everyone's going to get after it.
We don't have a specific question, I guess, about Keontae, but that commitment right there just shows everybody that Tang, the Antoine Davis, like I mentioned a bit ago, his misses early on are just kind of the flukes, and getting, 2 4-star guys in your 23 class, and now Keontae Johnson. This is what it's going to be like for Tang.
I agree.
I believe that.
This whole staff recruits.
I think
everyone.
It'll be a little bit tougher because right now with Keontae and then the years to come with RJ and Day, there's going to be playing time in year 1, like no matter what, right? Once you get more of a consistent roster, that might be an issue for him, that you might have to wait a year or 2 before you really do, crack the starting lineup if you're a 4-star guy. So right now it's awesome for Tang that he has that pitch to his recruits, but moving forward, that might be I wouldn't call it an area of concern, but maybe they change their recruiting just a little bit to fit that need on the roster.
Sounds like a good problem to have.
It is.
Next question comes from KSU number 1. Would you say the final 2 additions to the basketball team elevate K-State to competing for a top 4 spot in the conference?
It could. It could.
A little different than the first question we had in the first half about being top 5.
I mean, my calculation there is I need to look at the rest of the conference. Top 4 in this conference that's an accomplishment. 4 out of 10. I mean, it seems like it shouldn't be, but it will be. And I'm telling you, folks, when they get back to 12 schools and get rid of Oklahoma and Texas, it's even worse.
It's going to be a harder conference
Oh, my
with those guys
God.
gone.
And you're going to be back to just 4 byes in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. It's going to be brutal. Of course, KU will be in the Big 10 by then, but they'll probably bring in Memphis at that point, and then it'll still be kind of miserable. This conference is incredible in basketball. It's the best basketball conference, not even close. And you can talk about the ACC all you want, but there's too many programs that are non-competitive. You don't have that. You just don't have that.
Iowa State went from 0-18 to a NCAA tournament bid in 1 year.
Yeah. It's incredible. And so, yeah, finishing the top 4 is one hell of an accomplishment at any point. And, certainly, we need to give credit. Bruce won this conference twice. Granted, it was tied and shared, but so what? There's a banner. Those were great accomplishments. Now, can Jerome Tang come in and add in another title or 2 while being competitive year in and year out? Because that was the failing of the previous coaching staff. You shouldn't have a wild roller coaster up and down. You should be more consistent. So, yeah, it's doesn't surprise me, but it won't surprise me if they don't finish the top 4 and are still really good.
I think that can be your expectation, right? Be competitive in every single game. That should have been your expectation before Keontae Johnson. I think that should still be your expectation now after Keontae Johnson until we can finally, we finally start to hear a little bit more about him and how he's progressed. But again, like I said, I firmly believe this season hinges on Keontae Johnson, on the health of Keontae Johnson. Because if he's 100%, this team could be really good. Like you could be looking at an Iowa State turnaround where they were bottom of the league, like Ryan just mentioned. Now they're in the NCAA tournament. Keontae Johnson is that good. Mm-hmm. I think he's like, if you want to look at even transfers, he could be more impactful than Adrian Martinez as far as transfers go. Helping them win. So it's just, these 2 additions are huge. They really are.
With this question, I'm not really focusing on a top 4 spot in the conference or anything like that. As long as you get to the NCAA tournament, that's every team's. Even if you're a 16 seed like St. Peter's that nobody's ever heard of, or you're Duke or Kentucky, making it to the big dance, that's your goal because it gives you a chance to win it all. It doesn't matter how you do it. If you're the 4th spot or what was K-State, like 6th or 7th back in 17 when they were on the bubble and they got in, right? Just get in, and then you give yourself a chance.
I think the outlook before the additions was you're going to have some growing pains this year. If you make the NIT, I'd see that more as a success than a failure, and you're building back up to what you used to be. But now with these additions, you're looking at, maybe you're inside the bubble on the NCAA tournament bubble by, a decent amount at this point, just on paper looking forward.
The addition. No disrespect to Mr. Anthony Thomas, but the addition.
I was just going off of the questions here.
Yes.
The language there. But yes, Keontae, he elevates your program to the point enough to where you're the best player, and now you might be looking on the inside, looking out. Basically, if you're talking about the NCAA tournament,
I think Jerome Tang's obviously won over the fan base 100%. But if you go to the NCAA tournament and you actually make it out of that first weekend on a consistent basis, then you're really going to get fans behind you. Because outside of Bruce's Elite Eight trip, he never went to the round of 32 ever, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, the students are bought in, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Next question comes from Buckeye Sager. They have been a subscriber for 6 months, and this is their first time on the podcast. So,
wow.
Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for asking your first question. What attendance level do you expect in Bramlage for basketball? What if they get off to a slow start?
No, I don't know. I don't know that it has anything to do with basketball. K-State fans, you need to understand basketball starts in November, not January. And this is a bad habit fans have. They don't quite get invested into basketball until football's completely over. And you're kind of the opposite of what KU does. KU gets invested in basketball the second practice opens, and they start ignoring football. But naturally they've got one win at that point, so they do. Maybe they'll get off to a bad start. I don't know, but I think the enthusiasm. I don't think it'll be a bad product. I think there'll be so much enthusiasm about the effort and the upside. We talk about floors and ceilings. The ceiling's really high. And I don't feel like the floor is as low as where we've been experiencing. Honestly, the last 3 years, define what would be discouraging compared to that.
That was rock bottom.
Yeah. So, even last year where they were improved, they still ended up with a losing record. They still weren't overwhelming in the preseason. So it's going to take a pretty disastrous start to phase K-Staters. They're not going to get 6 games into it and said, I'm not interested in Jerome Tang anymore. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. I hate to keep taking shots at Bruce, but there's a palpable amount of fans that didn't go to those games just to show that they are done with Bruce. And so people support Tang. That's going to boost up attendance a lot, even though it might be during the non-con and football season. But I think a good majority of conference games will be sold out. Am I crazy for thinking that?
I think conference games, yes. I think early on in the season, especially November, December, I don't think it's going to be sold out like we saw with Bob Huggins or Frank Martin or even Bruce Weber at the very beginning. I just think that
in 19, he had it sold out.
It's partially, the pandemic still coming off of that, people getting back into the habit of going to games. But there's also a reduced capacity at Bramlage, after the Shamrock Zone. Couldn't think of it. Wanted to say the expansion of the Legends Room, which is not inaccurate, but it's not that anymore. But I think that, and Fitz kind of mentioned this, it's not really necessarily about Jerome Tang. It's about K-State fans showing up in November. And, mentioning KU, what does KU do in November and December? They play a lot of top-tier, blue chip, Duke, Kentucky, Michigan State, Arizona, whoever. KU isn't scared of anybody in the non-conference basketball. And quite frankly, they're so good that it doesn't matter if they lose those games. It matters that they play them. But for fans, I think it would help if K-State every year, regardless of the coach, regardless of what you expect the team to be, in November, that first or second week, one of the first 5 games, host a Duke, host a Kentucky, host a Michigan State. Get people excited about basketball season by bringing in and playing somebody. Quit playing directional state, from the wherever conference in the Southeast. Like it doesn't move the needle. Play games on Fridays and Sundays. Let people make a weekend out of it. Give people good opponents. Give people a reason to watch basketball, because there's no reason to invest yourself into watching Milwaukee, Green Bay, or wherever else. Whoever. Did I just make up a school?
No,
I meant Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Green Bay is a made-up school.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
Milwaukee and Green Bay are their own schools.
Yes, they are their own schools. But the point stands. Quit playing those types of opponents when you can go play better opponents and sell tickets, get people excited. Quit trying to win games against nobodies. I would rather lose by 20 to Duke than see K-State beat Wisconsin, Milwaukee, or Wisconsin, Green Bay by 50.
That's why I never understood the hesitancy to play Wichita State.
Exactly.
Play Wichita State. Oh, you might lose. Well, you're occasionally losing to Northern, Central,
Texas
Jones
Southern.
State. Yeah. And nobody's there to watch it. Get some games with some value. Play Nebraska every year. I don't care. At least it's regional. That's fine. I'd love to play Missouri every year.
Yeah, the non-con kind of sucks this year, guys.
I missed the 24 hours of college basketball on ESPN. The kickoff marathon was the greatest part of the season for college basketball.
Tip-off marathon?
Tip-off? What did I call it? What did I say? Kickoff.
The non-con this year.
Semantics. But that Virginia Tech game in 2010, I think it was 2010, it's like a 2 o'clock in the afternoon game in Bramlage in a midweek.
That was cool.
It's cool. It's great. Play at 11.
It was 2 a.m.
Yeah. But they're smart about those, and they put them in Hawaii and the West Coast and wherever else. But
tip-off in Tokyo.
Yeah.
I will say this. This is the non-conference. home schedule, just the home schedule. They play some good teams on the road. They go to Cal, they go to Butler, they go to that tournament.
We got, Nebraska and Kansas City?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not counting that. But just home games where fans can come to the game here in Manhattan. Play Washburn in the exhibition game. They open the season with University of Texas Rio Grande Valley.
Right.
Wow.
They play Kansas City.
By the way, that's coached by Matt Figger.
They play the Roos from Kansas City.
Should play them every year.
Mm-hmm. So then that's 3 games at home in November. Then they don't come back home until December 3rd, where they play Wichita State on a Saturday. Great idea. Nice. That'll be the biggest non-conference game of the slate. Then they play Abilene Christian, Incarnate Ward. They play Nebraska and Kansas City, so not in Manhattan. And then their next home game, non-conference, the last non-conference home game is Radford. So you're looking at 4.
Don't they have Florida?
In January.
Right. Which will be, now it's huge.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
is.
huge game now.
But in general, before the conference play starts, not exactly games that make you go, oh, I want to go. Like when you like Marquette. Like people might be, okay, I'll go watch Marquette play. But now you have to want to come to the game. You have to want to watch this team play to come to the game. You don't just come to the game because they're playing a good team.
What's Radford's mascot? Do you know?
The
Bulldogs, right?
They should be the Radishes. And I'm just going to go to my grave saying that. They should be the Radford Radishes.
I don't know.
The Fighting Radishes?
I just think it's
great.
Sorry. It's ridiculous that Wichita State is the best home game of the year, and it takes place in December.
And keep in mind, any meaningful home-and-home contract was inherited for the most part. They went out and signed Cal, but for the most part, everything was pre-signed. A lot of those other games are annual contracts you chase down.
Sure.
But, yeah, I agree. They and I think he will upgrade it because Baylor hasn't backed away from playing competition.
They want to play Cal, so they did that.
Yeah, well, Cal's going to be a great Mountain West program.
Speaking of realignment.
Oh, here we go.
For the last question of the podcast, I might as well just address this to Fitz. From KSU Cat 80, what are your latest views and understanding of the Big 12 conference realignment?
Well, I think they're being incredibly patient to let the Pac-10 realize that their diagnosis is actually really bad. They can claim that everything's good and everything's wonderful, but we know it isn't. I mean, anytime you've got schools that are like, yeah, we're with you. We're with you until we're not. You're not stable at all. I mean, the Big 12 knows that. And Big 12's rid itself, for the most part, of any substantive school that leaving would really hurt. Now, look, if the SEC calls Oklahoma State, yeah, they're going to join. That would hurt. But that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Big Ten going to call Kansas. That wouldn't hurt. I'm sorry. It wouldn't hurt. I mean, it would suck for the rivalry. Nice little sound effect there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was like them bouncing back. Mm-hmm. The Pac-12 needs to sort out how dire their situation is. And until they get the money situation worked out with their media rights, we won't know. But from all indications, they're looking at $30 million a year in media rights at max. $30 million. One estimation now I read was, and it's so funny, this was from the Stuart Mandel, who has been professing the value of the Pac-12, even as the Pac-10 without the LA schools, that their conference value to the media entities dropped 40% by losing those two schools. That never happened to the Big 12. That hasn't happened with Oklahoma and Texas leaving because, by all accounts, the value will stay the same or improve with the additions. So until the Pac-12 comes to grips with their reality, that their media rights deal will be far less than the other 4 Power 5 conferences, until they understand that their loss of the LA market was fatal. You can't replace it with San Diego State. That's not how it works. You can help. You can lessen the pain with San Diego State. And until that happens, the Pac-12 is going to stick together. But now we've seen reports that Oregon has been in Chicago courting the Big Ten, trying to get into that conference with the LA schools. Guys, you're dead. And the 3 clowns out there that write from the Pac-10 perspective that keep saying, oh, the Pac-12 is great, Pac-12 is better than the Big 12, they have been so discredited by now their most recent reporting, it's laughable. that they ever claimed to have sources that said the stuff that they said. And maybe they did, but they were lying, because sources will do that. The Big 12 is going to end up with at least one Pac-12 school. The Big 12 will end up with a Western. BYU's not going to be out there alone. They're going to end up with a Western wing of some sort.
It sounds like Arizona music.
Yeah, you know what? I think Arizona is a lock. I think there's a lot of hesitancy about Colorado now. I know a lot of people think, well, we're in the Big 12. Well, they left the conference. They made it clear they wanted to leave the conference. And in the 10 years since they left the conference, they've devalued sports to the point where why would you want to add them to the conference? They literally brought nothing to the Pac-12 in terms of major sports recently. Tad Boyle does okay in basketball. They had some decent football teams, but their football team's awful. Utah thinks they're ready for the NFL. I can't even understand what Utah. It's not just Twitter. I've been on their message boards. These fans seriously think they're Big Ten worthy as an academic and athletic institution, and maybe they are, but you're not going to get invited. I don't know what Brett Yormark's going to do, but I'm convinced in talking to him and others, this conference is going to be at 16 by 2025. Who it is? I don't know. Will the ACC get attacked? Probably. I mean, the Big Ten has turned into the big bad wolf. They're out there just shopping for things to take a bite out of. And luckily for the Big 12, I think they're done snacking on this conference, and they've moved on to other things. It'll happen. It's just now a matter of timing, matter of assessing the proper value. How much value does, let's say, Arizona and Arizona State and San Diego State bring to the conference in terms of being able to have consistent fourth window product for the football season? So there's a lot of measurements here. But I know this. Brett Yormark's going to add value. And maybe the value won't be apparent to everyone out there. They'll think, San Diego State. There'll be a reason, and there'll be some value. And I'm telling you, having all four windows covered on a game day Saturday is valuable, and we're seeing that value reflected in what the Big Ten did, because I think their contract is reflective of media entities knowing there'll be more out west than just USC and UCLA. They'll have all four windows on Saturday, Big Ten football wall to wall, all across networks. And maybe ESPN will be involved at the end of the day with that fourth window. But I'm the only thing I find strange at this point is the pace. I thought it would kind of keep up the pace.
It's been slow.
But Brett Yormark's like, okay, we're just going to
keep on matriculating the ball down the field.
Right. We're just going to let you realize that you're defeated instead of dancing on your grave. And then you'll pillage.
He's going to let you bleed out.
You got it.
I think he's still waiting on the Big Ten to figure out which Pac-12 schools they want.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that...
But I don't think there's any overlap. That's what's funny about this.
Well, I think...
I mean, I think...
Like, let's say you're Oregon. I think Washington's probably the top school if I'm the Big Ten from an academic and athletic standpoint.
Stanford.
Washington, sure. But Stanford's not a Big 12 candidate.
Okay, so hold on. I don't understand the academic presence in athletic conferences. I never have. But to the Big Ten, it is almost as important as the Ivy League. And that's Stanford research and their foundation, the amount of money they have in the bank. Oh, my God. Big Ten's salivating over being connected to that. And I don't think the Big 12 – I think the Big 12 likes the idea of the value Oregon and Washington would bring, but not the geography of it. So I think that Pac-12 North is what the Big Ten's eyeing, and what's left of the Pac-12 South is mostly what the Big 12's eyeing.
Maybe from a geography standpoint, fine. But that's not my argument here. If you're Oregon, you're not the top school probably for the Big Ten that they're looking at, from the Pac-12 even. But you have to consider the ACC and what number the Big Ten wants to get to. Do they want to get to 20? Because I think that's probably the most realistic spot that they would want to get to, is that number of 20. But if you take Washington, you take Stanford, or you take, the people you want, you don't want to be the Big 12 and say, well, we're going to take Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, San Diego State, whatever. We're going to take care of ourselves here. But then, you would have taken Oregon if they were available and they were interested. But we took all these other teams, and now they're kind of out on an island. And they're by themselves because they didn't. And that would be Oregon's fault. But what I'm saying is, why take somebody lesser than what? And it kind of gets to the point of taking Houston, Cincinnati, BYU, and UCF in the last round. You took what you needed, but had you waited a little bit to see what else was going to happen, let's say that USC and UCLA leave last summer, same summer as Oklahoma and Texas. How does the Big 12 look? Because I think that would open up the Pac-12 completely then. Arizona's probably saying, yeah, Big 12, you need somebody, we're coming. I think that it would have put the wheels in motion a little more on Pac-12, and I think that it would have left teams like Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, BYU more on the outside looking in. They might be considered the San Diego State of today, being like, well, this might be an option kind of thing.
If I had to guess, as I sit here right now, there'll be a time in the future when the Big Ten has 24 members, which, folks, is way too many. You're just one giant conglomerate of 2 12-team or 3 8-school conferences. You just are. I think the SEC will end up at 20, and granted, both of those end up relying on the ACC breaking up. But I think the Big 12 can settle in at 16 or 18 or maybe 20. If you had asked me a year ago, would the Big 12 be the third conference to survive in a 3-major conference world, I would have said no. That's what it looks like right now. And I'm not scared of that ACC grant of rights. If you just dig down into it a little bit, enough schools can vote to break that, to get out. And eventually, then, once 8 schools decide to leave, and the Big 12 comes in and says, you 4, NC State,
come to Papa?
Yeah, Virginia Tech, whoever's left. Then they just vote to dissolve the conference, and nobody's caught off guard. And it really will be. Notre Dame, Wake Forest, and one other school are going to be just left out, but Notre Dame's choosing to do that.
Last thing I want to mention here. Did you guys watch the Manti Te'o documentary?
Not yet.
No.
It's a must-watch. You said Notre Dame. That got me thinking about that.
And if that's a documentary, there are some great documentaries from Kansas State. Ryan Wallace wants to do The Receipt for Jamar Samuels. I want to do The Bombing at the OU game. And there's other ones out there.
Just don't text your made-up girlfriend.
He was catfished.
He was catfished.
Yeah,
he was done dirty. That was not him.
I haven't watched it, but
you know what?
You never met the girl?
Yeah, that to me, that's weird. But that is your generation a little bit. I mean, that is unthinkable to my generation because, we had like abacuses and.
Well, you didn't say that your girlfriend, my girlfriend goes to a different school? I feel like that's an excuse as old as time. You haven't met her because she goes to a different school. She goes to Salina South.
Those girls had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Those girls are classy compared to me. That's it for the PowerCat Questions Podcast. We appreciate it so much. Make sure you tell your friends to listen to the PowerCat Podcast. And if you have an imaginary girlfriend or just friend in general, go ahead and have them listen too. Would an imaginary person download the podcast? I'm so confused.
Thank you for listening to the PowerCat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. PowerCat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowerCat.com.
On Paramount Plus.
The choice is lightning in a bottle.
When you are associated with something legendary, you're like, what am I supposed to do now?
Witness the story of Black Sheep's Dreads and his new chance of a lifetime. Catch The Choice is Yours, now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.